I'd like to invite you, my friends, to look tonight at the gospel. There is a lot of the message from God that we can build up our faith this Sunday. There is a lot about the story of Bartimaeus, son of Timaeus, which we all can and indeed should identify with. But before we think a little bit about Bartimaeus, this blind man, let's look first at the first words in the gospel. We hear that Jesus left Jericho. Jesus left the city of Jericho. And perhaps that city is not very known to us, but in the ancient times it was very much known. Indeed, all Jewish people knew Jericho too well because it's one of the richest cities. It's like Hollywood nowadays. It's a city in the plains of the Jordan River, so full of this natural richness. It was for many decades very strongly fortified before Jesus' times, because the rich people, powerful people who lived in there were never conquered. Jericho was called also the place of fragrance. It smelled well, it smelled beautifully, because of the rich trees which were in and around the city. It was oftentimes called also the city of palms, palm trees. So Jericho is a city which is really remarkable, is very rich, flourishing, rich in trade, fertile in soil. It's celebrated for its splendor. And that's the city which Jesus leaves. And yet, in the Old Testament times, if you do read the Old Testament, Jericho is famous also for another reason. The people who in the past ancient times before Jesus Christ who lived in there were indeed conquered ones. They were conquered by the Israelites. God spoke to the Israelites saying that he is sick. It's enough of the sin and sinful life of the people of Jericho. And the Israelites are to take the Ark of the Covenant. They are to carry that Ark of the Covenant on their shoulders around the city for 6 days with trumpets and prayers. And they did so. On the 7th day, very important, the 7th is the final day, the holy day, the day of the Lord. On the 7th day, the Lord destroyed the unconquered walls of Jericho. And the Israelites came in and won that city for themselves. And later on, we are hearing today in the gospel that God, Jesus, is visiting Jericho. But he left that city and now is just outside of it, outside of this place of splendor, the city of fragrance, the city of richness, the city which is flourishing. He is leaving that place with disciples and with a large crowd of people who are following him. And when he leaves the city, a blind man heard that Jesus is approaching on a street. on a lonely path away. Also, this man now is very interesting. We are hearing in today's gospel that his name is Bartimaeus. And we not only know his name, but the gospel even gives his father's name. His dad's name is Timaeus. And this is very unusual, to hear not only someone's name, but also someone's father's name. It means that Bartimaeus used to be someone very important. Indeed, he was a rich man. He probably lived in Jericho before. He probably was a man of success. He was a rich man, a powerful man, and yet something terrible had happened to him. He became blind. And because of that, there's no space, there's no room for him anymore in the rich city, the city of success. Something which we can find in the modern times many times as well. When it stopped working, people are cast away. So this man, Bartimaeus, is sitting by the road and he is desperate. He has no idea anymore what to do. No hope, no life, no dreams, nothing. And yet, out of the sudden, like a miracle, he hears whispers. People are saying on the road, Jesus from Nazareth is approaching. And so, this man, who has everything yet has nothing, cries out, Son of David, Jesus, have pity on me. And he is scolded. Don't bother the Lord. Don't bother Jesus. But he has nothing to do. He has nothing to lose. And he screams all the louder, Jesus, Son of David, have pity on me. The Lord heard him, and he called him. Bartimaeus was so shocked that he jumped up. He threw out his cloak, and he was naked. And as such, he is running, or trying to run towards Jesus, being brought also by the others. What do you want me to do, Lord, that I may see? Have your sight again. And he got his sight again. The man who was poor, naked, desperate, was forced to sit on the ground by the road, was begging and desiring only one, to have life again. He receives Christ. He receives power to see. He receives the light. He hears the truth. He recognizes God. He desires now not what it was before great for him. Now he desires Christ. Because at the end of the gospel we hear that when his sight returned, he followed Jesus along the path, along the way. He didn't go back to the holy wood. How oftentimes something like that happens. The city of splendor, the city of fragrance, the life is all out there in the city center, the temple bar, and so on. And yet, when a person is not capable anymore, one is cast away. Where to find life? Where to find the strength, the light, the truth? Christ is coming to everyone. Christ is passing, but not everyone nowadays can hear him. Not everyone can notice him passing. Only if one leaves the city and sits by the wayside, so to say, can hear that Christ is approaching. Indeed, only when one is alone in a way, when one really knows how really poor I am on my own, I can really identify where the strength comes from. It's not coming from me. It's coming from him. And only when we truly see how poor we are, often weak, lonely, we can scream, despite even if someone says, "Don't bother the Master," we can truly say, "Jesus, Son of David, have pity on me." And he calls, he invites to come close. And when he restores our sight, then we can truly see. Then we can really understand. I could end up here, but I will give you a very interesting example. And with that I will finish. Someone quite recently brought this example to my mind again. A man, he died when he was only 39. He was German, although lived in Poland during the war. His name was Dietrich Bonhoeffer. He was a great Protestant Lutheran theologian, and yet his time of adult work, research, preaching as the pastor, his best years, so to say, had occurred in the times when the Nazi occupation was at the power in Germany, in Poland, in Europe. He could choose to be happy enough in his little circle or to speak up. But to speak up at those times, one had to pay a terrible price. And many of Christian leaders, Catholic as well, didn't choose that path. Dietrich Bonhoeffer chose to be bold and to speak up. Indeed, to cry that we cannot be Christians only by name, but also by the deeds. We have to be vocal. The effect of it was that he inspired and gave the hope to many. In the place he lived, in the world he lived, people were trying to make Europe, Germany, and many other countries at that time the new Jericho, the place which is fragrant, flourishing, but only with human pride, nothing else. Dietrich Bonhoeffer stood up and said, "No, we need God. Without God, we are truly nothing." He paid the ultimate price of this speaking up the truth, but he lived that truth. And he gave the hope and the light of Christ to the people who lived symbolically in the middle of the city of Jericho at that time. And now it comes to us, because Jericho is not the center of Dublin or in American Hollywood. Jericho can be my own house. Jericho can be my own heart. Jericho can be everywhere where I feel self-accomplished, happy by myself, because it's enough. All of those places, areas of my life when I think that I do not need Christ, these are the places which we need to leave. And we need to go out through the main gate and sit by the way. And there, without those things, we can see and realize that we do not have much. Indeed, we have nothing. But Christ is passing by. Christ is passing by. And everything it takes to be the richest, the happiest, the most accomplished is to say, Son of the living God, Son of David, Jesus Christ, have pity on me. And he hears that cry and he says, come to me. What do you want me to do? We are to say, Lord, Rabboni, teacher, Jesus, that I may see. That I may see. And that's all what we have to do.